All right, another sad tale. ICE is planning to release 600,000 illegal immigrants into the United States by September. And it looks like Biden, of course, is going to undo Title 42. So this is more border catastrophe. Joining us now to talk about it, Wisconsin Senator Ron Johnson, who knows a thing or two about this because he was former chairman of the Senate Homeland Security Committee. Senator Johnson, as always, sir, welcome back to the show. First up, this number, ICE intends to, it's a forecast, 600,000 illegals by September. That's what they told a federal judge. First up, what do you make of that forecast from ICE?
It dramatically understates the problem. But let me give you numbers that we actually know. So last year, about 1.25 million individuals came to this country illegally and dispersed, either as known gotaways or they encountered. We stopped using the word apprehension because we do this so fast. We just encounter and we let people come into the country. So 1.25 million, that's a number larger than the population of 8 states. Last month, 221,000 encounters. That's 7,000 people a day. That's a large caravan every day coming to this country illegally. Now, we returned about 140,000, probably under Title 42. We detained them in some way, shape, or form. But we don't have very much in terms of detention facilities. Allowed 80,000 people in. So if you extrapolate from that 140,000 a month plus 1.25 million, that's close to 3 million people when they get rid of Title 42. And by the way, there are tens of millions of people that want to come to this country illegally when they realize we have complete open borders. And right now, the Title 42 restriction is the only restriction in place. That is when we have no idea how many people are going to flood in this country illegally.
So one key point here is Title 42 has done a lot of good, basically. That's what you're saying. The numbers at least lower by 100,000 a month or some such thing than would otherwise be the case. Is that clear? Is that what you're trying to say?
Yeah, I mean, DHS is not very forthright with the numbers, but again, 1.25 million got into this country. We probably returned over 1 million last year. So that's roughly what we know. But what we also know, Larry, is that this open border policy is facilitating the business model of the most evil people on the planet, putting billions of dollars into their pockets, drug trafficking, human trafficking, sex trafficking. How do you think those girls pay off their human traffickers? And, of course, over 100,000 drug overdoses. This is a disaster, and the mainstream media is ignoring it because they're covering up for the guy that they got elected. This is scandalous, the complicity of the media.
Senator, just one more wrinkle on this one, and then I want to get on to the Title 42 debate in the Senate. But I'm reading that a number of people on our terrorist list have been found to be entering into the United States. To compound all these problems, we're letting terrorists in.
Yeah, those are the ones that were caught. Again, there are about 300,000 known gotaways. Okay, we know we saw them get away, but they got away. We don't know who they are. There's a much larger, potentially much larger number of unknown gotaways. That's what happens when you overwhelm Border Patrol with 5,000, 6,000, 7,000 people per day that they have to encounter and process. We were down the border last year, and CBP was giving direction to try and clear these people in 8 hours. What kind of background check can you do on people? This is completely out of control. I've heard a figure of over 150 countries have been represented in those encounters. This is completely out of control,
Wow.
and this is a huge national security issue.
A couple more things before we leave you. We appreciate your time, as always. Would remain in Mexico reinstatement by Biden, that was a Trump policy, seemed to be working very well. Would that be more powerful than Title 42, or would it be at least a good bookend to Title 42?
Well, it certainly pretty well stopped the flow of unaccompanied children and families exploiting our asylum laws. Title 42 has been very effective in terms of returning single adults. So you really have 3 components to our illegal immigration issue: single adults, families exploiting our laws, and unaccompanied children. So return to Mexico was a consequence. And when they couldn't come into America automatically, they didn't come at all. So it's very effective, but I have a hard time believing the Biden administration will implement that with real effectiveness.
That's because it would be too successful to close the border.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, they want open borders.
Yeah.
Larry.
No, I get that. I mean, as horrible as that is, I get that. So we have Senator Langford and Senator Sinema bravely with some other colleagues, many of whom are running in swing states for re-election. I just want to ask you about this legislation because they're saying that you would keep Title 42 for some kind of 60-day period after the Bidens would end the so-called COVID emergency. So there'd be a kind of grace period. But I'm scratching my head trying to understand that, Senator. That's not definitive. That doesn't say Title 42 becomes the law, and it certainly doesn't say anything about remain in Mexico. It sounds like a real election year kind of wussy, schmushy, stopgap kind of nothingheimer.
It'd be a Band-Aid. What we need to do is we really need to fix our asylum laws, which are way too generous. We set this threshold at credible fear. So all anybody has to do is say, I'm afraid to go home. About close to 90% of those claims of asylum are not valid. Asylum is actually a pretty high hurdle. You have to be persecuted by your government under some very strict criteria. Economic migration is not asylum, but that's what the vast majority of people are coming here. So if we could rapidly adjudicate those asylum claims, most people would be sent home. That's what we need to fix. We need to fix that very low credible fear standard.
Well, just last one real quick, sir. Will the Senate pass a law for anything, whether it's continuing Title 42 or any darn thing that would help to close the border?
Larry, I offered amendment 3 times to just build the wall that we already contracted for and paid for. It costs us more not to build the wall than to actually build it. Yeah. Only Joe Manchin joined Republicans voting for that measure. So, no, I have a hard time believing Democrats who want open borders. I mean, people need to understand that. Don't fall for these election year gimmicks. Democrats across the board want open borders. Very few are actually sincere. Kyrsten Sinema may be one. Joe Manchin may be one, but that's about it.
No, you're right. So I'll just say, save America. Build the wall. Thank you, Senator Johnson. Terrific stuff.